Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the forum. Every Wednesday, the Columbus Metropolitan Club brings together visionary leaders, including CEOs, elected officials, artists, advocates, and changemakers like you to explore issues shaping our community, hear challenging perspectives, and create new connections. For 50 years, 50, CMC has brought Central Ohio together for conversations that inform, challenge, and inspire. My name is Sophia Pfiffner. I'm the president and CEO of the Columbus Metropolitan Club, coming to you live from the heart of downtown Columbus. Your attendance today is proof that democracy requires something from all of us. It requires us to show up. So thank you so much for showing up for today's conversation. We're also grateful to the National Veterans Memorial and Museum for hosting us, and to Downtown Columbus Incorporated for today's complimentary parking. So hooray for free parking for everyone who's tuning in today in person. We'd also like to thank the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation for presenting our live stream, and our live stream promotional partner, the Columbus Dispatch, for hosting us every single week. We're so grateful to every single individual and organization that makes conversations like today possible, so let's give all of them a round of applause. So welcome to today's timely conversation on an issue making headlines across Central Ohio and, quite frankly, across the country. Who's watching the fight over flock cameras? They are increasingly common along Central Ohio roads, small cameras that automatically photograph passing vehicles, read license plates, record identifying characteristics, and send the information to a database used by law enforcement. Police say Flock's automated license plate readers are an investigative tool, but privacy advocates argue that the cameras collect information about millions of ordinary drivers who are suspecting absolutely nothing. How much privacy should Central Ohioans surrender in the name of public safety? We'll dig into this question and many others with today's panelists. So please help me welcome our panelist, Trevor Chandler, Senior Director of Public Affairs for Flock Safety. Gary Daniels, Legislative Director for the ACLU of Ohio. Nick Konves, Assistant Chief of the Columbus Division of Police. Columbus City Councilmember Emmanuel Remy. And our host to facilitate today's conversation, Lynn Winfrey, reporter with the Columbus Dispatch. Lynn, welcome back to the CMC. The podium is all yours.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Okay, so let's start with a question for Trevor. Flock safety started in 2017, and now many law enforcement agencies around the country, and most in Central Ohio, have installed Flock's automated license plate reading cameras. In case there's anyone here or listening who doesn't yet know what Flock does, how does the technology work?
Thank you, and thank you for having me too. So the way a basic license plate reader camera works is it's a motion sensor camera. So a car passes in front of it, it triggers a photo. The camera tries to get the best image of the rear of a vehicle to get the license plate, along with identifying characteristics like make, color, and things like roof racks. And that is then accessible to law enforcement for however long they choose to retain their data. Most law enforcement agencies across the country retain their images for about 30 days. And those can be tied to a potential hot list. So if there is a wanted vehicle for a missing person, they can get an immediate alert that the vehicle was at this location, heading in this direction at this time. It can also then be used for investigation purposes. So if you come back from a cruise and you realize 2 weeks after you left that your home was broken into, the officers can then potentially use that to generate a lead for that crime to solve it.
Cool. Thank you for clarifying that. Councilmember Remy, you said at the recent council hearing on Flock that you don't believe Columbus has to make a choice between safety and civil liberties. Panelists, does Columbus have to choose between safety concerns and privacy?
I'll start with this one. I think, it was previously mentioned, Flock is one tool that we use, and it's an investigative tool. Yes, it does capture license plate data and some characteristics of cars, but to me, the bigger concern for us as a law enforcement agency is how are we controlling what we do with that data? Law enforcement just by design has access to very personal data. If you think about it, law enforcement is going into everyone's homes when there's a call for service, a 911 call. They are seeing the worst days in people's lives, but there has to be some control over what they see, what they gather, evidence, how we protect all of that. And so that's kind of what we're focusing on, and I think you can strike a right balance there. We know it is undisputed that every single day we are having success stories in the city of Columbus alone from flock cameras. We are seeing a huge rise in being able to utilize them for suicidal individuals, silver alerts, shootings, homicides. We just had a high-profile kidnapping that we utilized license plate readers to. The child would not have been found when we found the child, but for the license plate readers. We just had a very high-profile stranger groping on OSU's campus, and immediately was able to, get that solved with the use of a license plate reader. Those are undeniable facts, but we recognize, and it is very important for us to ensure that we are controlling access, viewing. We require our folks to have a law enforcement purpose to run queries. We use an auditing tool where we can audit the searches, and we have automatic triggers that trigger, where we can go and look at an officer's use and determine whether or not it was for a law enforcement purpose. All of these tools on my belt can be misused. Every database we have can be misused, and that's not particular to, or it's not specific to law enforcement. When you go to the doctor's office, very personal information about you is put into a system, and any employee could misuse that database and look somebody up, whether that be a former, romantic partner or anything like that. It's what controls are in place to ensure that that data is being used for the right reason by the right people. And I think we can strike a right balance with that.
Gary, I'm going to toss that question to you too.
Yeah, so I think we need to be cautious about public safety versus civil liberties and privacy type debates. That is, it should be no surprise that if you surveil people all the time, you're going to capture more wrongdoing. It's the same kind of argument. Nobody's making this, of course, thank goodness, but if we were to go around home to home and confiscate everybody's guns, you know what? There'd be a whole lot less gun crimes as a result. But what we need to do here is, I think for a lot of people, let me put it this way, on the ACLU of Ohio end, we're never going to be comfortable with this type of surveillance technology. We would like to end its use because of our own experiences as an organization over the years and over the decades with government surveillance, and it's seemingly, particularly at the federal level, insatiable appetite for more and more information about all of us. But for right now, I think where a lot of us are is kind of a triage type moment, because this technology, and not just automatic license plate readers, other similar types of technology that are also very problematic, these are done, these are adopted, they're used, they're rolled out with no laws in place whatsoever governing their use. And I say whatsoever with an asterisk. At the state level in our public records law, you can't get access to automatic license plate reader data. Like, I want to see where my, neighbor traveled to. I want to see where my ex-wife traveled to. I'm a stalker, that kind of thing. So very wisely, we have exempted that under Ohio's public records laws. But otherwise, we have seen this technology over the last couple decades roll across Ohio to all kinds of communities, rural, suburban, cities. No laws that I know of, and I talk to the media several times every week about this, and I always ask, is there a local law? Is there a local law? So I don't want to pick on the city of Columbus too much here, because they're in the same boat as I think everybody else around Ohio, but I think for right now, we're really at a triage moment. Can we get, if we're not going to end this altogether, and our government officials aren't at that point at least yet, what can we do to severely minimize these types of devices being used for round-the-clock, warrantless surveillance?
Councilmember Remy, many Columbus residents have been coming to City Hall in recent months demanding that flock cameras be taken out immediately. And at the same time, Columbus Police has said that this is a valuable tool for policing. How should the public's expectations for the division play in determining the tools it is using for policing?
Well, obviously, there's no debate that this is a valuable tool, but the question is there a limited scope that the tool could be used for law enforcement purposes that provide accountability, transparency, and there's audit, and these are the things that we're talking about. I mean, I've got draft legislation right now, thanks to Dr. Pruitt. Section 1917 would be a section that would be added under the 1914 code section that will talk about what these parameters are. If somebody misuses it, what is the penalty for that? If they're not, accountability requirements, so that we hear regularly what is going on when people are using these tools. Because I agree, Gary. I mean, we've got to put some. They set policy, which is a guidance for your officers, but we set boundaries, and that's what's important here, is that we establish those boundaries as they use technology, because it's changing every single day.
Speaking of these boundaries, I know that Flock implemented a few changes to how the search functions work and changing the data retention policy a few weeks ago. Trevor, is there a reason why these okay, never mind. Is there a reason why these search changes and the policy changes happen now versus within the past 10 years that Flock has been around?
Yeah, it's a direct result of the conversations going on around the country. There's no two ways around it. Flock has always been the most transparent law enforcement tool that has been used. We were the first ones to establish the 30-day standard data retention. We were the first ones to have these permanent audit logs that have uncovered a lot of conversations that need to be had. And so we've always been there, and what we heard from our law enforcement partners, from the communities we work with, from stakeholders, is they didn't want us to just rest there, they wanted us to go further. So now, not only were we the first there, we are now the first and only law enforcement tool that has proactive auditing. It's important to note, Flock is now the only law enforcement tool that proactively flags potential misuse. That is a huge deal. Over 6,000, around 6,000 to 7,000 law enforcement agencies use Flock, use any number of technologies. We are the only technology that flags potential misuse, and that is huge. In addition to that, we have reduced our guidance from 30 days now down to 7 days for our new customers. That is something that if they want to, they can move beyond or move below, but we set the standard with 30 days. And what we looked at as these conversations were happening is 90% of our customers were utilizing the search function for crimes that happened in the last 7 days. And so that's what came up to that. And we realized not every law enforcement agency is going to want to do that 7-day retention. Some are going to want to do longer. Some are going to want to do something between 7 days, 30 days, any number of things based on the dynamics of their cities. But it's important to note that with this intense conversation that's going on, there's two different avenues that an organization can take. They can roll up into a ball and say, we're just going to wait this out, and we feel that we're right, you're wrong, we're just going to wait this out. Or they can lean into the conversation, have those tough conversations, understanding we're never going to agree on everything, but work to continue to set the bar. And that's what Flock has done. We are now the only public safety technology that does what we do, and we hope other people will follow suit.
Gary, I want to ask you what you make of the recent changes that Flock has made.
Yeah, thank you. And to reverse gears here just slightly, I think when people talk about potential misuse of Flock or automatic license plate readers, obviously, what they're talking about is, officers, looking up, somebody they pulled over that they're attracted to and things of that nature. I'd like to set a baseline here, civil liberties-wise, and say the misuse is the existence of the technology surveilling us all the time. So, yeah, we got that low-hanging fruit of what do we do about people that completely misuse the system to surveil individuals that have no law enforcement purposes. That's great, but again, that's low-hanging fruit, and I think we need to think in terms of misuse being, again, the existence and use of the technology, again, not just automatic license plate readers, but a lot of other types of technologies. And so, any kind of improvement is good improvement. It still doesn't satisfy us by the very existence of this technology, and I think that there are still some holes that remain with what Flock's talking about. I think, when they talk about we're going to have a better system system for how people define their searches with what they're searching for, it's still really, at least by the ACLU's read, it doesn't prevent an officer from saying, well, it allows them, I think, to cover their tracks better. I think people have been very sloppy with their abuse of this, and so if you're really trying to use an automatic license plate reader database for non-law enforcement purposes, then the fear is they can just cite a law enforcement purpose from a drop-down menu or typing it in or however exactly it works. So, that's been a very real criticism of automatic license plate readers is, well, don't be so dumb about it. If you're really using this for nefarious purposes or trying to track down that, attractive woman you pulled over kind of thing, just say it's for some other purpose. It's been a problem before, and I think it's going to be a problem that continues.
And I have a question for Assistant Chief Konves. Speaking of policy changes, could you speak to what has happened in Columbus as far as flag policy changes over the past few months? And should the department have implemented these safeguards any sooner?
So we've always had a policy governing our use of technology, and it has always required that any of our databases be searched for a law enforcement reason. That is not new. That is a decades-old policy that we have had. Now we're more so looking at our auditing tools to see how we can better start or better look at oversight of this particular system. And this is one of many technologies that we utilize. If you think of forever, we have had cases, and luckily it's only 1 or 2, maybe 3 a year, of the license plate database being misused. And we catch that. There's certain things that the state flags an automatic audit where we are able to look at it. And in our policy, and this has not changed, any misuse of a law enforcement database is considered critical misconduct. And that is important. That term is important to us at Columbus PD because critical misconduct means that's not just regular misconduct. That is serious, that could result in suspension, demotion, or termination. And right in the policy, it denotes that any type of misuse of a law enforcement database is considered critical. That is going to maintain. I agree with him that the state law has not kept up with new technologies as they come out. Misuse of the license plate database, so if somebody runs a license plate, is a criminal offense. For a police officer to do that, the police officer, if they misuse that, has committed a crime. Right now, FLOC does not fall under, FLOC, license plate reader technology does not fall under that because the law has not kept up. But just because there's no law, criminal law about it, we still handle it very seriously internally, and we still discipline that and can, progress discipline up for a violation of that.
Gary, opponents of this technology have had a lot of concerns about FLAC and automated license plate cameras. You've kind of alluded to some of these over the panel so far, but could you outline what those are?
Yeah, so it gets back again to that warrantless surveillance of all of us and what exactly this can reveal about us. So with automatic license plate readers, if you so wish, and I used to say years ago about this, if you so wish, and now we see, yeah, it's actually developed. This is in place now in various areas where you could, if you so wish, follow someone around a city for all their whereabouts. So you can figure out what kind of physical or mental health care are they receiving, where do they go to worship, what kind of protests, rallies, those sorts of things do they attend? Do they go to the gun store? Do they go to the gun show? Do they do anything like that? And so the fundamental part of civil liberties is really if you're not doing anything wrong, then the government should leave you alone. And this is a very good example of that and of this concern being manifested. So we want to see laws in place with regard to when can these devices be used versus when they can never be used. How long is the data kept for? Who is it shared with and for what reasons? And I want to say, again, not exaggerating here, I'm not aware of a single city in the state of Ohio that has local laws on the books in this regard, and certainly, except for that public records exemption I mentioned, we don't have it at the state level either. So there's some good solid policies, I think, out there that do some good things, not everything. And policies are better than nothing, but policies Again, we're talking about very low-hanging fruit here. We need to have actual laws if we're not going to end this altogether. So, we're the type of organization, we take positions on one end of the spectrum many times. It doesn't mean that we're not willing to work in harm reduction, politics and legislative work being what it is. You have to many times engage in harm reduction. So we look forward to these continuing conversations. And I think, part of the unfortunate part really about this is we're here talking about automatic license plate readers. In another 6 months or a year or so, I think these conversations are going to be rather quaint. There's worse technology now developed, on the way, being implemented, and it's going to make, I used to complain, the ACLU of Ohio used to complain about red light cameras and surveillance concerns. Oh my God, is that old-fashioned and outdated at this point? Because there's now so many more technologies that do so much more and are so much more problematic. But so it's, if we're talking about harm reduction, then those buckets of categories, necessary audits, encrypting all of this information and everything. And it just still, I'll keep repeating myself here, my first media call on automatic license plate readers was 20 years ago. 20 years now, 2 decades we've gone through this here in Ohio with no laws governing this. It's obviously quite maddening to us in the civil liberties world that we've gotten to this point with no legal statutory controls.
Trevor, I want to ask you to respond to what Gary was saying about additional legal and statutory regulations. How would Flock respond to that?
We support them. We are one of the biggest supporters of regulation of license plate reader technology across the country. We have worked side by side with civil rights advocates to pass some of the most comprehensive regulation in the country, whether it's in New Mexico, whether it's in Washington, Oregon, Virginia. We support at the state level this sort of regulation. We believe that there's always going to be differences of opinion on, how long. Some states have 21-day data retention, some have less. None require warrant requirements, and I think it's important to note in this conversation, there is a very real, serious conversation about, do these cameras establish a pattern of life? Can they track you everywhere they go? And I do think it's important to note that courts unanimously across the country have found no, that is not the case. There is obviously still ongoing litigation. There is obviously still a lot of technology to be built that may run up to that line. But up to this point, every single case that is good law in this country, across the country, is saying that license plate readers do not violate that line. And so, but we will continue to advocate for legislation, and we'll continue to work with both law enforcement, because I think it's incredibly important to note, as you're talking about data retention, as you're talking about warrant requirements, it may sound hypothetical, it may sound theoretical, but every one of these decisions has an impact on victims, it has an impact on survivors, and it has an impact on how effectively the tools can be used. But we are a strong proponent of legislation.
When it comes to court decisions and the constitutionality of this, I think it's important to point out. So the United States Supreme Court has not ruled on this issue specific to automatic license plate readers. But over the past 13, 14 years, they've had exactly 3 cases before them about surveillance technology in government. In 2008, you had United States versus Jones. It involved law enforcement using a GPS device on somebody's car. The Supreme Court's essential holding in that case, get a warrant. Then, and I believe it was 2000, I might get these dates wrong, 2016, I think it was, you had Carpenter versus United States that involved cell phone site location information, tracking down people, narrowing suspects based on where their cell phone was at a given time. What did the Supreme Court say about that? Get a warrant. Now, in this the most previous term of the Supreme Court, they had another case also with cell phone location information, a slightly different method called geocaching or geolocation. Supreme Court said, get a warrant. Automatic license plate readers and drones and other stuff will eventually be up before the U.S. Supreme Court. And it's hard to believe, maybe not under 100% of circumstances, but it's very hard to believe that the Supreme Court isn't going to look at this particular technology, their rulings from these last 3 cases, and say, hey, you know what? Get a warrant, at least for situations X, Y, and Z. So, Yes, the Supreme Court has not ruled specifically on automatic license plate readers, but they've definitely laid the breadcrumbs out there about how they feel, finally, how they feel about government surveillance. And so when we talk about compromises and we talk about what can be done and how do we balance all of these various interests, certainly when we're talking about legislation and laws, a warrant requirement should be first and foremost about how do we navigate this with automatic license plate readers. So when we're talking about data retention and we're talking about what they're used for and where we deploy them and everything, keep in mind we're talking about all of this, government doing it without a warrant.
Councilmember Remy, you've said that you have some concerns about flock safety as a company, but you also see the law enforcement value. Given the concerns about the system, do you wish you and others in city government did anything differently when the city first got these cameras? And are the new rule changes implemented both by Columbus Police and flock safety sufficient to you?
They are a step in the right direction. I think that, again, there's more work to be done from a codification standpoint. We know that there are things that we want to establish as law here. And in order to utilize these these types of technologies, it may require a warrant in the city of Columbus. This is something that, everything's on the table, and I'm trying to make sure that my job, I'm one of 9, is to provide my colleagues with the information that they need to make a decision about this. And so that's what we've been doing, of course of a hearing a couple weeks ago, and certainly listening to area commissioners and people within our community, along with the 57 that spoke at my hearing, and then 70 plus written testimony. So we're in this phase where we're going to determine what is best for the city of Columbus as it relates to technology. But this is a long-term, we're looking at this as a long-term, not just this particular technology, but what are we doing for the next iteration of technology that comes down the road, and how is it going to fit in with public safety here in the city of Columbus?
I want to add to that. As soon as we stop and say it is enough, that is hugely problematic. Technology changes day to day. Case law changes day to day. We are an accredited agency via CALEA, and there's an accreditation requirement that every single one of our policies is reviewed on a regular basis. There's a reason for that, because you can't ever get stagnant in this job. Just like he mentioned red light cameras. Who would have thought that that would be old, and nobody's talking about that anymore because it's not relevant, and we don't even use them anymore. So we are always constantly, as soon as we implement new policies, in a year we're going to be looking at those same policies going, okay, is it still working right now as written? And generally we tweak every policy that we review. We're tweaking the majority of them every single time we review them because something has changed. So I think you have to look at being, engaged with continuous process improvement, and that is what we do on a day-to-day basis with our policies.
This is first for you, Assistant Chief, and then anyone else, feel free to jump in if you'd like. When Columbus did an audit in early July, we found that over 15,000 searches could have been potentially immigration related. Of the, over 19 million that pinged in the national search. Could you speak about what Columbus Police have done since then, and if Columbus's FLAC data internally or externally could be used for any immigration enforcement purposes moving forward?
To your second question, it is no. We are not in the business of utilizing that. We've made that very clear. We have had a policy for more than a decade on how we interact with immigrations and customs enforcement in the city of Columbus. And our position has not changed. I don't care what someone's status is. We will never stop doing enforcement solely based on somebody's immigration status. The only time we will ask about that is if a criminal offense has occurred. This is important to us because we don't want people to be afraid to come forward to report crimes, to be a victim, or to be a witness to them. They should be owed the same type of victim services and not be afraid to come forward and talk to law enforcement solely because of their immigration status. And that has been in place for more than a decade at CPD. I want to be very clear about that. What have we done since? So we have opted out of our statewide and national reciprocal search relationships where we're sharing data on a national scale, where anybody that's opted into that system can then access our data. Same with the statewide. Now we're only using one-to-one shares, and we have, I think, 478 current one-to-one shares, and that allows us to, look and be comfortable with who we're sharing our data with. And some of them we get data from, and we don't share our data back. And we're not getting data just from other government agencies. You'd be surprised at how much your data is being collected at, private businesses and stuff. And sometimes we were able to see that. And somebody brought up a great point of, yeah, we have this right now, but can you imagine a world where there's a kidnapping or an abduction, and a private business has the piece to solve it, but the law enforcement doesn't? And so, that was really profound for me. And again, it goes back to, we have to make sure that we're auditing its use, we're using it properly, and we have controls in place. Just in the last 2 weeks, we have implemented where now we are requiring a case number or incident number to be placed on. We can then go back and make sure that use of the LPR system was tied to a specific incident, or there was a legitimate reason for it. Again, you'll never be able to stop someone from lying and entering something in. It's the human element, and that's in any business. Employees are going to make mistakes, and there's some employees that are purposely going to make mistakes. That's not just law enforcement. That's any industry in the world. Probably many of your businesses that all of you have been a part of, employees are going to make mistakes. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes not intentionally. What are you doing about it is the question we're asking ourselves. Are we doing enough about it? We've deemed it critical misconduct. We handle it very severely, and I wanted to point that out.
Add one of the changes that Flock has made to further customize the tool per community. So in response to the serious concerns about immigration, we provided an immigration filter that blocked particular keywords or search words, even misspellings of those keywords. What we have now rolled out in the latest round of updates is for communities to even be able to say what crimes they want their cameras to be used for and not be used for. So any officer that does a search in the Flock system has to choose a NIBRS code, a code provided by the FBI that says this is a specific crime. Every community can choose to opt out of certain crimes to be used, including immigration. I was in a Southern California city. They don't want their cameras used for sex work. And so they're going to opt their cameras out from being searched for anything regarding solicitation or prostitution. And so now there's an additional level of customizability for each community so that their cameras are only used by those communities they share with in a way that aligns with their values.
I'm going to add one more point to that. In Columbus, we have had those filters in place long before this conversation started picking up traction. We're talking back in 2025. And it's not just immigration for us. It's also reproductive rights. We don't want any of this used for those. We don't want searches being done on our network for all of that stuff. And we had those filters in place with keywords where it would prohibit that search. Not just with us, but other folks wouldn't have access to the data.
Trevor, I know Flock is adamant that customers own their own data, and each city and locality can set their own search parameters. But broadly speaking, could Flock data be used for communities that don't opt out of that for purposes of immigration enforcement with or without a direct partnership with ICE?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah. Could Flock data be used for immigration enforcement with or without a direct partnership with ICE for communities that have not opted out?
If it is legal in a community for a law enforcement agency to do so, yes. We have thousands of law enforcement agencies across the country under different state and local laws that have different values and beliefs and laws as it relates to that sort of law enforcement. And that's why we provide the level of customization where every agency, every community, they are the only ones that can choose who they share with based on their values and their priorities.
I think it's worth saying any amount of control on who gets access to this data and for what reasons is a good thing. As someone who was doing this work pre-9/11, on 9/11, and after 9/11, I can tell you that if the feds want this information, they'll get this information. That's been proven time and time again, particularly after 9/11 and the levels of surveillance. ACLU has litigated these issues on up to the U.S. Supreme Court and everything. I mean, when you look at the types of things that Edward Snowden and other people revealed about what our federal government does, the PRISM program, tapping into servers of private corporations, all this stuff that sounds like, weird science fiction dystopia type movies that actually happened, and all of the documentation is out there in court cases and what have you. If the feds want information, if ICE wants information, they'll get it. So the controls are nice, it provides some sort of maybe minimum level of comfort, but I don't want people to fool themselves here that say, yeah, as long as we do this as a policy, as a law, whatever else, it's going to keep the federal government from accessing it. I just, again, having done this work pre and post 9/11, I just can't find that believable.
Thanks, everyone. It's CMC's longstanding tradition to take audience questions, and we'll move on to questions from our live stream and in-person audiences in just a few minutes. So if you have any questions for our panelists, now's the perfect time to head over to the microphone over here. And if you're joining us on YouTube, just drop your questions in the chat. Panelists, before we turn it over to the audience, I have one last question for you, and I think we'll start with Trevor and move our way down. Dozens of cities around the country have been ending flock contracts in recent months. Columbus's contract is up in December. What should Columbus City Council members have in mind as they decide what to do?
Yeah, so first I want to make clear there have been a lot of intense conversations that have resulted in some cities either pausing or ending their programs. I can't speak for other organizations, but I can speak for Flock. The number of cities that have signed up during this time is 10 times those that have paused. So, every city that chooses to pause a program gets a lot of headlines. Every city that signs up doesn't get as many. And so we're proud to be continuing that work and having those conversations. I'm not here to tell the city of Columbus and the council what to do or what the community should feel. This is the conversation around public safety and privacy is a very individual one and a very community-oriented one. Every single community across this country has different values when it relates to the balancing of public safety and privacy. The great thing about Flock is that it is customizable to adapt to those values. So again, if the city of Columbus says, we see the value in this, but we just are going to shut off sharing, Flock allows for it. There's no mandate to share utilizing the Flock system. If the city says, 30 days is too short, we think we want to be able to solve crimes that go back 2 months, the system, or shorter than that, the system allows for that. So what we hope is that through this conversation, that it can be based on, facts, not hypotheticals, that it can center survivors and victims. The people that have their cars stolen, whose family members go missing, whose family members get murdered, they deserve answers. And Flock is a proven way to help them get that answers. And that's why we're so passionate about what we do, and we're willing to work with the city to find whatever works for the Columbus's city values to make that work.
Gary?
Yeah, I think I said this earlier with my initial comments, but in case I haven't, this isn't just a Flock problem. I mean, ACLU of Ohio has been very critical of Flock, I think deservedly so, for a variety of reasons. But, where we've seen this kind of the conversation turn, at least in some communities, like for instance up in the city of Cleveland, is they see it as only a Flock problem, and so automatic license plate readers are okay, as long as we have some other corporate entity doing it. And so again, I think I urge people to look at the bigger picture, that this isn't just a Flock problem, and again, not just an automatic license plate reader problem, but just dumping one company, one corporation for another one isn't going to get us out of this mess. So we have to keep that in mind, because I think there's some lawmakers out there at the local levels that wish this conversation would just go away, and they think the way to do that is to pin everything on Flock. And again, I'm here saying I think they deserve plenty of criticism, but don't take the eye off the ball and say, well, we got rid of Flock, but for us right now at the ACLU of Ohio, we think, look, anybody who's using this stuff right now, this type of technology, is suspend it or end it right now until you get some sort of adequate laws in place. I don't know that you can get them that are all entirely adequate, but why are we doing this without laws in place? So we urge everybody to take a step back, whether you're not going going to renew a contract, whether you're not going to enter into a contract in the first place, I don't think it's an unreasonable request to say, get those laws on the book first. Councilman Remy referred to forward-looking legislation as well, which I also think is vitally important, so that we're not having conversations yesterday about drones, today about automatic license plate readers, and tomorrow about the even worse technology that's coming. You need to have something that covers all types of these types of technologies, looking forward before they're purchased, before they're deployed, before they're implemented. So there's a variety of steps people can be taken, but we just see it as it's essentially irresponsible to be using this type of technology with so many privacy and civil liberties ramifications with no laws governing their use. I'm just going to keep beating that dead horse as long as you keep me up here.
Assistant Chief.
So I think, obviously we work hand in hand with our council. We are currently celebrating in the city of Columbus record drops in violent crime. And one of the biggest players in that success is not just our folks out here doing the work. We have incredible detectives, we have incredible officers. I'm very proud of the work that they do. They can't do their job without technology, and we know it's undisputable that license plate reader technology has led to us solving crimes, has identified suspects for us, has protected life, has saved life, has returned missing kids, has helped the Silver Alert. I've already said that. That is important. One thing that has not been mentioned is we use FLOC and LPR data in police misconduct cases to track officers that are committing misconduct. It's not just the public, it's internally as well. So there's many uses for it. Again, the common theme up here that all four of us agree on is there must be accountability. There must be proper oversight of this, whether that's policy, law. It's got to be a combination of that. I agree that there does need to be, legislation on this very topic. We've had legislation for our license plate system for many years in governing its misuse and making it criminal. Again, it's how we're handling the data, what we're doing with it. But it's undisputable that the investments that our city council has made into our technology at police has helped us reduce the violent crime to record low numbers. So,
and Councilmember?
Well, again, I think that whether it's FLOC or whatever iteration of technology is next, I have to say that, I came onto council when technology was more about body-worn cameras and not a lot about, things that were everyday monitoring us around the community. I've learned a lot. I, appreciate the advocates that came down to our public hearing to talk about, what this means to them and what this technology should spark question, what type of questions this should spark as legislators. And I appreciate we do need to be looking at every piece of legislation that brings technology into the division. Again, thinking about the overall public safety policy that the City of Columbus residents expect, deserve, and want. And so we are going to continue to do that in every piece of legislation from, moving forward. We are going to look at it through that lens. And a lot of that comes from, just learning from advocates that came down to speak, and we appreciate that because we need to hear everybody's voice.
Thanks, everyone. Now we want to hear from all of you. Doug with CMC is curating questions from our live stream audience. And for those of you here in the room, please join Doug at the microphone. Doug, what's our first question?
Anna Lynn, thank you so much. Thank you so much to today's panelists for joining us for a great conversation. If you do have a question for today's panelists, please do join us here at the microphone. I've already got a line here, and we're getting questions online too. Great questions at CMC always have two things in common. They can be asked in just a sentence or two. Let's call it 10 seconds or less, please, so we can get to as many questions as we can. And what punctuation mark does a question end with? They end with question marks, yes. So please end your question with a question mark. I'll start us off with this one. The cameras may belong to Columbus, but the network extends far beyond Columbus. Where do you say local control actually ends?
So the way that the system is set up, we control which networks we are a part of, and we also control whether or not we just receive data or whether we also reciprocally share our data. And we receive data from a lot more folks than we share with. For instance, we're not sharing our data ever with private entities. It has to be another government agency. But again, we've opted out of national reciprocal sharing. We've opted out of the statewide to really draw that in to where we have more control over that and keep it. I would say that's where the local control ends, is we have full control over who we share our data with under the system.
Hi, this has been very interesting. Thank you. Can you talk about Ring cameras? I guess I'm warrantly searching my neighbor's weekly Kroger delivery every week without realizing it. So it seems like everybody's upset about the flock cameras, but we've had Ring cameras for years looking at everything, and then you talked about the business cameras. I'm sorry that didn't end in a question.
Yeah, so you being, this is the technical term, you being a private actor, a non-government actor, anybody using a Ring camera, other type of surveillance technology, the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply because you are not the government, and the Bill of Rights applies only to government. That said, I mean, we've got concerns too about private use of these types of technology and government use of it as well as the intersection between the two, because we know, and I've heard, I'm not sure if it's true or not, maybe it could be cleared up here, but that the city of Columbus will use private cameras. I think it's been referred to today, for instance, from people who do car repossession work and everything, and be able to use their databases as well. So, it's we're concerned about every layer of it, public and private. As an organization, we mostly focus on the government end of this. But it is true, going back to what the person who asked the question there. I get people all the time talking about, well, are you worried about that privacy is going to end, or we're going to build this surveillance state? People, we're there. We've been there for a long time. There should be no more talk about where we're headed. We are there, and we have been there a long time. So, yeah, we are concerned about all of it, but let's not fool ourselves here. We're already in the hot water. We're just trying to bail our way out of it at this point.
Thank you. I'm going to combine two questions from the live stream audience. Flock's contract states that Flock retains perpetual license to aggregated data. How does Flock use that data outside of law enforcement purposes, and is that data ever sold?
No, Flock does not sell customer data. Period. It's one of the misconceptions that's out there. How that data is used is to improve the license plate recognition. So I just happened to see on AMC My Cousin Vinny the other night in the hotel room. The big question there is the relation between a Pontiac Tempest and a Buick Skylark is the whole movie. Sorry if I ruined it for you. But what this happens, if that mistake is happening between a Pontiac Tempest and a Buick Skylark, the cameras are able to utilize those images anonymously. It removes all metadata. It does not include where it came from, what time it was taken, what location, but it allows it to improve the image so we get as few mistakes as possible. And so that's what that aspect of the contract works at, because I think all of us can agree on, even the folks that don't agree with license plate readers, is if they're being used, they should be as accurate as possible. That's what that allows.
I have a two-part question. One, what conversations have been had with neighbors in Columbus about the flock cameras? And then what guardrails have been put in place currently to keep the misuse of technology?
I'll speak to the guardrails question. So we have a policy in place that makes it critical misconduct, as I previously mentioned. But now we have an auditing tool that Flock has released an auditing tool. But before that, we did an audit before the automated audit function was even turned on. Before we even knew about it, we implemented keyword bans, so immigration, reproductive rights, and a whole bunch of keywords tied to those issues, where in 2025 we implemented those that would prohibit the search from occurring. The search reason, if it was for immigration, it does not allow that on our network. So we've had that in place. We also now are requiring the incident number. It has to be tied to something that allows us to track it. Much easier to go specifically to look, okay, you put this in the system, you're saying that this search was related to this. Is it really related to that incident? We're able to check that now. We also have automatic triggers. I'm not going to put those out because we keep those audit triggers, you know, where they are. And we have automatic ones that will automatically flag to our team and require a review by the chain of command.
And as far as residents and talking with our community, I can speak to my community in particular, the Linden community, where when you talk with area commissioners and residents there, they are incredibly happy with the reduction in crime that they perceive in their neighborhood, and even asking for more. So, you know, the feeling sometimes on the street, depending on which neighborhood you were in, you know, aside from surveillance perspective, that it is very positive, and they feel that it has been making their communities safer.
Thank you. As the panelists have stated, technology moves quickly. Should CPD personnel be allowed to wear AI-powered camera eyeglasses at work? What would happen to those videos? And I'll add in, you know, what is the role of AI in all this?
So any type of recording device, if a recording is made pursuant in the official course of somebody's duties, it does become a public record, and it is accessible to anyone that wants to request that. So that has not changed. So any type of recording, whether that's a cell phone video, whether that's a photo taken with a cell phone, it's all public record. We get public records requests, hundreds every single day. We're going to probably exceed upwards of 10,000 public records requests for this year by the end of the year. So.
And to clarify a little bit further there, and this is where the city of Columbus deserves an awful lot of credit on this issue. Years ago, the city was a leader in the issue of how do you handle specifically police dash camera video and police body camera video when you're talking about that intersection of public records and transparency and private moments that don't involve, because at the ACLU of Ohio, we believe public records laws are to keep an eye on the government. It's not to keep an eye on each other. So even today, you have people with YouTube channels and what have you that do public records requests for videos of people doing perp walks and DUI walks and things of that nature, and they monetize it, put it online and everything else. Ohio, though, you know, Columbus, I don't know if it was a policy or they actually passed it into law, but what it led to is a statewide law that says, yeah, these videos and everything are presumptively open except for issues of, look, you know, you came across somebody who's just been sexually assaulted. You've come across somebody, their arm's been chopped off. You come, you know, these just horrifying circumstances where, hey, you know what, probably a good idea not to have that available via public records laws, because it doesn't have to do with functioning of the government. It's just a way to sort of, you know, for us to spy on each other kind of thing. Now, the law that was ultimately passed also says, well, unless that abuse, unless that injury, that death, what have you, was caused by government or law enforcement, well, then it swings back and says, well, no, then that's obviously going to be public record. There's a lot of nuance there. It's not the easiest needle to thread, but the reason we have a state law, and I think we might still be the only state that has such a law, is because the efforts of the city of Columbus made locally that then turned into something statewide. And I say that because if we have done that at least once before and become a model for the nation, we can do that again.
Jimmy Bright, I hate to admit it, but I've been doing cybersecurity for half a century. You seem to be coming to a consensus that there should be a legal process to extract data that the government has collected. Now, I'd like to ask a question of everybody here. Raise your hand if you have disabled location on your phone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and none of the speakers. Hey, that's interesting. I don't know if you realize the impact of that, but you have basically, without a warrant, given up all of the information that you're talking about now, and you want to regulate it. I mean, you know, when Google says things won't work if you give off a location, The only thing that won't work are maps and apps that are spying on you. Thank you.
Hello again. My question is, as we know, which local law enforcement agencies work with ICE changes all the time. Since the flock meeting, we've already had another community local law enforcement add itself to the 287G agreement right outside of Springfield, Ohio. What about these agencies that are about to be in 287G agreements? Or I'd like to narrow in on the Ohio State Highway Patrol, which does have a 30-year history or 20-year history of doing ride-alongs with ICE and CBP in Northern Ohio. Mike DeWine has sent them to the border twice. They have a very active relationship with ICE in this city. What do you do about that? Because I don't see a situation where you will ever stop sharing with the state troopers, right? And so they will always have access to our data, and they will always have this friendly relationship with ICE. And the answer can't be filters, right? It just can't be filters. So what do you do about the sheriff's department with their booking policy? Licking County, who is picking up people outside of 287G agreements?
Let me be very clear. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's a state law enforcement agency. I don't care if it's a local law enforcement agency. We control 100% who we share our data with. We've already removed one. And we regularly look at that on a weekly basis. We are looking at the 287G list, and if somebody that we are sharing with is added to that list, they will be removed from our network immediately as soon as we see it. There's no agreement to forever share data with somebody. We 100% control who we share with and take that very seriously.
When we talk about any kind of quote-unquote reform efforts that are short of actual elimination, key is how long do we keep this data for? Because, of course, quite naturally, the less data there is, the less data that is kept for a certain period of time, the less it can be used and circulated and what have you. So, New Hampshire passed an automatic license plate reader law. You get 3 minutes to decide what you're going to do with that data. Not a week, not a month, not 3 months, 6 months, some of these other things we see in laws and state legislatures and what have you. New Hampshire said, look, decide if you need this for certain law enforcement designated purposes. If not, get rid of it, 3 minutes maximum. This is great for civil libertarians because I can do exactly what I'm doing right now and say, hey, if New Hampshire can do it, why can't we and everybody else do it? And it's good luck to elected officials and legislators and everything going out there and saying, no, we can't do things as good as New Hampshire. They're much better than we are. We just can't do this for any number of reasons. But we have at least one state out there doing it. The sky hasn't fallen, and so maybe we don't get to 3 minutes. Maybe it's something like 48 hours or what have you. But again, the key, at least one of the keys to a lot of these very real and understandable issues and concerns about who we share this data with and why can be very much minimized by keeping all of the data for as little time as possible.
And I know we could certainly keep this conversation going, but Doug has given me the signal that our time is up. Please join me in welcoming Sophia back for closing remarks.
All right. Well, I know every single week, whenever we have a CMC forum, it seems to be that the conversation really starts to take place right at the 50-minute mark, and then we have to wrap up. So I apologize for those who wanted to keep the conversation going. But I do hope that everyone found today's discussion enlightening. I found it very informative. One thing that I took away was that safety and privacy don't have to be opposing values, that clearly this panel agrees that we want both. It's just a matter of how we get there. And I also want to congratulate and thank this audience for participating. Civil discourse doesn't happen just by happenstance. It happens because community members come to meetings just like this to hear different perspectives and do so with an open mind. So I really appreciate everyone who was in the audience today, but also our online participants, all of the questions that you ask. Please keep on asking them. Please keep on reaching out and sharing your perspective with our elected officials because they're there to represent you. And I hope that you continue participating in civil discourse just like this. All right. Soapbox done. We are grateful to Downtown Columbus Incorporated for providing complimentary parking today. We're thankful to our presenting live stream partner, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and our live stream promotional partner, the Columbus Dispatch. We're also thankful to the National Veterans and Memorial Museum for creating a space for us to gather every single week dedicated to service. But most importantly, we're thankful to the panelists. So Trevor, Gary, Nick, and Emmanuel, and Anna Lynn, thank you so much for our conversation. Let's give them all a round of applause. And if you are an avid reader like all of us on the CMC team, the Columbus Metropolitan Library recommends We See It All, Liberty and Justice in the Age of Perpetual Surveillance by Jon Fasman. Check it out. It's at the library. And then lastly, we'd like to invite you back to another forum because we do this every single week. Every week we have a different topic. Next week is going to be really exciting because we are raising the curtain on Columbus's cultural future. We are actually having a special forum on stage, that's right, on stage at the beautiful Palace Theater to talk about our cultural institutions. So I hope that you can join us. Thank you so much for today, and I hope you have a great Wednesday. Thanks so much.